Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Friday. I'm back in the UK after a couple of days in Milan. I hope you're having a good start, maybe, to your weekend. If you've finished work already, wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. If not, I hope you have a great Friday as we head towards the weekend. And another very big weekend it is Chelsea versus Arsenal on Sunday, of course, in the Premier League. The final game before the final international break of 2024. Arsenal certainly going into it on the back of a poor recent run. Very, very much need a win at Stamford Bridge. It would just be what everyone needed just to lift the spirits a little bit ahead of the international break. And it would leave them in a fairly decent position as well, heading into the final sort of run up to Christmas. So yeah, big game. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Got some injury news. Declan Rice potentially missing that game with a fractured toe. A big decision for Arsenal to make on his fitness. So we'll talk about that. Got some responses from you guys from what we discussed in yesterday's show. We're going to talk about Gabriel Jesus, who's been speaking about his lack of minutes at Arsenal. Talk about Thomas Partey, who won't be going to Ghana during the international break. So plenty of us to get stuck into. But I'm going to start with kind of the continued fallout from Edu's departure and what's going on at Arsenal right now. We'll start the show with a little bit of discussion about that. Obviously, it's been big news what's going on at Arsenal since Edu's. I mean, was a shock departure on Monday, even though there had been murmurings of it. The fact it happened, and when it did happen, it happened very, very abruptly, or seemingly very, very abruptly. It's obviously been big news, and it's been talked about a lot. Now, Edu handed in his notice on Monday. He said his goodbyes on Tuesday before the squad flew out to Germany, to Italy. Edu went in to the training ground. He's with Arteta, with Richard Garlick. Everyone got together, and Edu said his goodbyes to the team, sort of explained why he was leaving, went round, said goodbye to everyone, and he's now working a 6-month notice period. Now, when he say working a notice period, he's not going to be around. We're not going to see Edu at the stadium anymore, at the training ground anymore, like that. He's basically working gardening leave for the next 6 months before he starts his new job, which will be with the Marinakis group, obviously heading that group of clubs. So what do Arsenal do now? Now, myself and James Benge are going to be sitting down a little bit later on today after Mikel Arteta's press conference. We're going to sit down and record Inside Arsenal Extra Time. So that's going to go out this evening, and we're going to talk at length in that show about kind of what happens next and what Arsenal are going to do, and maybe who they're going to look for when it comes to their next sporting director. You want to get involved in that show, you know what to do. Get down into the comments, start of Extra Time, leave some questions, comments, anything like that, and we'll pull some of them together and get them included in the show. But we are going to talk about what happens next when it comes to Arsenal potentially appointing their next sporting director. But in terms of what happens right now, Arsenal obviously played a game on Sunday, and then Arteta and the leadership group, or the management group, football management group, are going to fly over to the United States, and they're going to sit down with the Kroenkes. Now, this isn't a meeting that's been hurriedly put together or anything like that, just because of what's happened with Edu. It was always planned. This is a meeting they have every year in November, in the final international break, when they fly over, and this is when they set their plans in place for the summer in terms of the transfer window, everything like that. It's always in November. They fly down, they sit with the Kroenkes, and they sort of set out the plan for what they want to do in the summer, players they want to try and sign and stuff like that. And obviously Edu's departure is going to be very much at the forefront of that conversation as well, because it's going to be like, right, what do we do? How do we go about setting out this process? I don't necessarily think it's going to be a particularly quick process from what I understand. You know, don't think an appointment's going to be made like that. They're going to take their time. They're going to make sure they get it right. And it's going to be a very, very thorough process. So that's going to be part of these discussions, as well as the summer transfer window. Now, I know we've got January coming up, and I'm sure that will be discussed at this meeting as well. But as we always know with January is very much more of a sort of reactive window than it is a proactive window when it comes to doing your business. You know, if opportunities rise, I'm sure Arsenal will potentially try and do it in January. But very much the focus when it comes to squad building is always the summer. January's kind of is always a reactive thing. You know, if an opportunity arises, you go for it. If a bid comes in, you sell a player, then you try and bring in a replacement, that sort of thing. But very much this meeting that's going to be coming up with Josh and with Stan will be very much about the summer window and Edu as well. So like I said, for the discussion about exactly what happens next when it comes to Arsenal and the sporting directors and how it's all going to work, then myself and James are going to do a special show on that a little bit later on today. So you want to get involved, as I said, get into the comments, leave me your thoughts, your questions, and we'll pull some of them together and get them included. Okay, moving on now to Sunday's game. Obviously, a really big game for Arsenal. They drew it 2-2 last season. Declan Rice scored. I think it was his. No, it wasn't. It wasn't his first Arsenal goal, was it? His first Arsenal goal was against Man United, but then he scored the goal that started the comeback in the 2-2 draw last season. Now, he's a big doubt for this game. I don't think he should play this game. He's got a fractured toe, and apparently he is very keen to play. But I'm not sure he should. If he's injured, he's injured. I think you're taking a big risk if you, I don't know, if he has an injection or something like that, or plays through the pain barrier, as the cliche goes. I'm just not sure that's really a wise decision. Now, Declan's not been in the best of forms this season anyway, and I just don't see why you'd risk playing him if he's got an injury. And he's also, there's talk that he's been called up by Lee Carsley for the England squad. But why should he go to England and potentially play 2 games with a broken toe? I don't really understand it. So as kind of brave, if you want to call it that, as it might be, to say, I'll play through the pain barrier. I want to play for Arsenal. I want to play for England. I mean, that's all well and good. But if you're going to do yourself further damage, I don't really see why that should be under consideration. I think if he's injured, he's injured. He shouldn't play. And he certainly shouldn't go away with England. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like I said, he's not been in the best of form anyway, Declan Rice, and maybe a little bit of a break might do him a bit of good to sort of reassess and get himself ready for after the international break when he comes back. So, I mean, a late decision will be taken by Arsenal. With obviously Mikel Arteta is going to be speaking a little bit later on today in his press conference. It'll be interesting what he says about Declan, but it is a fractured toe, and I know it's not the biggest thing, and you can't fix a fractured toe by putting a plaster cast on it or anything like that. But I'm not sure going out and playing 90 minutes in a London derby at a real high intensity and then going away with England and playing a couple of games for them as well is going to do it any good in terms of the long run. So I just think he should be absolutely taken out the firing line, not played, let himself get ready and be back after the international break. Right, Gabriel Jesus has been speaking after the game. He was in the mix zone at San Siro after the game against Inter, and he's been speaking about his season so far and his limited opportunities, shall we say. Obviously, came on at half-time against Inter Milan. Couldn't turn things around, although I did think his introduction led to a more improved performance by Arsenal. So Jesus was asked, I think he was talking to ESPN Brazil, or it might have been TNT Brazil. I'm not sure. One of the Brazilian media grabbed him in the mix zone, and this is what he had to say about his season so far. He says, "Well, I believe that not only me, but any player, all players want to have more minutes. I'm obviously never going to cause anything in the club. I'm going to try and demonstrate on a daily basis in training, and when I get into the games, to have my chance and to do my thing and trust that things will happen. I've always made it very clear that I want to improve, that I want to try and do my best and to help Arsenal. Obviously, my moment is not the best. It's not the moment I wanted, that I would like. But as I said, I'm working on my own, trying to do my best and get more minutes to play. But that's a consequence of my training. It's a consequence of the way I play. And I leave the decision then to the coach. I believe in my potential. And I also know that the fight for my place in Arsenal is big. But I also believe that I can help a lot. I mean, it's understandable. He's not too pleased with his lack of minutes. He came to Arsenal to be the main man. He started off in unbelievable fashion. Those first few months with Gabriel Jesus, I'll never forget. It was just an absolute game changer, and he was unbelievable. Obviously, he's never been the same since that injury at the World Cup. He came back, and we've just not seen the same player since. He's just been littered with injuries since then. He's never been able to get a run going. He is fit at the moment, and I do feel like he's maybe been a little bit underused. He could have started more games in this run just to try something a little bit different. And I think he's looked sharper and a little bit brighter. But ultimately, if you're not scoring any goals, then you're going to you struggle as a forward to really warrant your place in the side, especially I think with Havertz, because obviously Havertz hasn't scored many for a while, certainly in the league anyway. But what Havertz brings to the team, you can really see when Jesus is in the team at the moment. If he's not scoring, the contribution is a little bit minimal. And so he needs to take his opportunities more. I'd play him against Chelsea, I have to say, because of what's been going on and how Arsenal have been playing the last couple of weeks. I'd have started him against Inter as well, but I'd play him against Chelsea. But will Mikel Arteta do that? I'm not sure he will. But yeah, interesting stuff I thought from Gabriel Jesus. Let me know what you think of that comments, and let me know what you think in terms of a potential starting 11 for the Chelsea game. Do you think Jesus could be a shout? Would you, like me, maybe bring him in for this one just to try something a little bit different in the starting 11? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Interesting stuff going on with Thomas Partey and Ghana at the moment. He's not been called up by Ghana for this international break. Now, obviously, he missed the last international break with Ghana. I haven't been called up. He was ill, I was told, and he didn't go with Ghana. Um, and I don't think that has gone down very well. They obviously didn't get. I think they got 1 point from the two games in those qualifiers for AFCON, and they're not going to qualify for AFCON now. And so I don't think his decision not to go to that squad has gone down very well. And I think this being left out of this squad is a bit of punishment for that. Now, the coach, Otto Addo, said, I had a confidential talk with Thomas. I'm a coach who always likes to protect the players, so I hope for your understanding. For me, the team is like family. I'm not going to come out with internal issues, but I made it quite clear to him. He wanted to come, but I made it clear why he is not coming. Like I said, it's confidential. It's difficult for me to mention all of the things. It's like that. We have to move on now. As you know, Thomas is not coming, but it's not a permanent thing. We are always open for him to return. I hope that the things we talked about, he will do better in that, and that he will want to join in with the team maybe in the next window in March. I think he has a good perspective. We had a good talk, and we are on good terms. So I think this is from what I understand, it is very much, I think, they are not too happy with what happened last time out, and this is punishment for it. And I can kind of understand it as well, to be honest. I don't think this is the end from what I hear of Thomas and Ghana. I think he will be back in the next international break. I think he accepts this decision, and he will be back in the next international break for them. But yeah, I thought it's quite interesting news. I mean, it's good for Arsenal. I think he's in such good form at the moment, Thomas Partey, and it's good for him, really. He can have a little 2-week break now. Given the amount of football he's played so far this season, it's a nice 2-week break for him ahead of the run-up to Christmas, where there's going to be so many matches. So from an Arsenal point of view, I think it's a good thing. But Thomas obviously did want to go away with Ghana this time, and hasn't been allowed to. So, yeah, I'm sure he'll be back. So if any Ghana Arsenal fans watching this channel and you think, is this the end for Thomas Partey with Ghana? From my understanding, no, he will be back in the next international break. Okay, moving on to some of your questions and comments now. I mean, it was a really miserable comments section, unsurprisingly, to be fair, after yesterday's video discussing the result at Inter Milan. So I've pulled together a few things, some positives, some negatives. Some of the really sort of negative, angry ones I've left out just because I don't think anyone really wants to see me go over those on a Friday morning going into the weekend. But I can understand the anger and the frustration because it's a poor run of form. Here's one from Goss who says, Martinelli has missed Calafiori, Saka likewise with Odegaard. These players are fundamental to the way we play. We have yet to find our way without them. Arteta has been reluctant to take chances, and that hesitancy has cost us points. Trossard is having little impact in the attacking sense. Martinelli is getting no help, though I think he did better than others suggest against Inter. We are still in position to make the top 8 in Champions League. I see no reason to overreact to this run. We'll be fine once we get some of the injured players back, and Arteta shows he has learned some lessons from this poor run. I think it's a good point about Martinelli, and I was talking about it at length over the while I was in Inter. I was sitting down with James from Gunner Blog and we were discussing it. No one has been more disruptive in the last couple of years, I think, than Gabriel Martinelli. Basically, since Granit Xhaka left, it's just been disruption non-stop down that left-hand side of the pitch. It's been one player playing 1 week in midfield and then another playing at left back another week. It's just been chopping and changing. The only sort of consistent presence in that team has been Gabriel Martinelli, and every single other week he's having to adjust to another player behind him playing a different style, and a right-footed left back or a left-footed left back who goes into central midfield. So I do think that has to be taken into account, is his sort of dip in form in the last 18 months or so, basically since Granit Xhaka left. Now it's up to Martinelli still to find a way to be able to perform despite those limitations that he's been dealing with when it comes to the squad as well. So I'm not just sort of absolving him of any blame. I do think Martinelli still has to make more of an impact than he has been, but he's absolutely been disrupted by things that have gone on that have been completely out of his control as well. PNG says the link between midfielders and attack is missing heavily due to Martin's injury. We adapted okay-ish, but now it's catching up. Give Ethan a proper chance against Chelsea. He will repay it back like ESR did. Agree 100%. I've said it plenty of times. I think he should be playing more. I'm surprised he hasn't started. I would start him at Chelsea. I would start Gabriel Jesus at Chelsea as well. Noah says the sky is not falling and no winger in the world is asked to deal with the problems Martinelli is tasked with and has been for years. His left number 8 has been chopped and changed over and over again. His left back rarely overlaps. Jesus, the player I had the most natural chemistry with, has got off the boil and can't get back in the side. Our system tasked him with doing more defensively in a year than most wingers will perform in a lifetime. Martinelli will be fine once the rest of the left side gets sorted. Glad you got your visit to the San Siro, Mr. Watts. Hopefully the next one will be a better result. Thank you very much. Noah, again, just like Goss at the top there, I think they're very, very valid points when it comes to Martinelli. Magoo here says there is undoubtedly a wider context to our poor start to the season. Injuries, red cards, tough fixtures, but our transfer window was poor and it is biting us. We needed another top attacker, whether that was a striker or a winger, and we ended up getting Sterling, who isn't being used as a sub, and we are chasing games. Then selling ESR and loaning Vieira and not getting cover left us short in that position, which if Ranieri was the reason, then why not give him more game time? Very disappointed, especially given how City aren't at their best yet. It's tough to argue with any of that, Magoo. I think you're absolutely right. It always felt like Arsenal had left themselves a little bit short in the window. We all said it, didn't we, as soon as the window shut? You know, Sterling was a bit of a rush job at the end because they just needed to get a body in. That hasn't worked yet. You know, it might work, who knows? But at the moment, it hasn't worked yet, and they definitely look like in the attacking department. They did try. You know, as I said before, if Nico Williams had said that he wanted to come, then they would have absolutely got that or did all they could to get that deal over the line. If Sesko had said yes, they would have got him as well. So they did try to improve in attack, but when they didn't get the players that they really, really wanted, they obviously chose not to go down and sign anyone else as well. And it's difficult to look at it right now and think that's not been potentially an error. But who knows? If it come the summer, if they then get the players they did want originally, I'm not saying they will, but if they do, then maybe you look at it and think, well, it was worth waiting on for another year because then you do get your number one target. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the summer. Kevin says, we haven't suddenly become a bad team overnight. These players scored 90 goals plus last season. Just a blip. Can see us getting a run together again in the league with the fixtures we have in the second half of the season, especially. I think the fixture list does have to be taken into account. When you look at Arsenal's away games that they've played so far this season, you know, it has been an incredibly tough start to the season, combined with all the injuries and the disruption and the red cards and everything like that. It has not been an easy start at all. And I think that does need to be taken into account. And I don't think they're far off it. They're still in the quarterfinals of the League Cup with a very good chance of getting into the semi-finals. They're in and around it in the Champions League still, in terms of, you know, they've still got a good chance of making the top 8 if they perform in the next 4 games. And in the Premier League, they're not that far off it. I think they're one defeat, one result. You know, if Arsenal won at Bournemouth, for example, they'd be right there in the Premier League as well. So it's not an absolute disaster. It's worrying, and they have to get themselves out of this rut that they're in right now. Absolutely, because if it carries on for much longer, then they will be in a really difficult situation in terms of the league. But it is not a disaster yet. But it's down to them to get themselves out of it. And that's why they need to start Sunday. Go to Chelsea, win. You do that, then the season looks a hell of a lot better going into the national break. Lose, and it is in a really difficult spot. So it is a massive, massive game on Sunday. No doubt about that. Right. Thank you for getting in touch, everyone. Appreciate it. As always, like I've said earlier, myself and James Benj will be sitting down for Inside Arsenal Extra Time. I'll get it out in a minute. Very, very soon. And so watch out for that. That will be going live a little bit later on today, just about. If you're coming home from work, perfect time, about 5 o'clock for you to listen or watch it if you want to. Until then, have a great start to your weekend, everyone. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.